comes to me at night. His name is Fred. And he keeps trying to take me to the boiler room. He wants to kill me.
What is a dream?
It is a portal between our inner and our outer world.
Information that comes to us while we are sleeping from another dimension, another reality.
What is a dream? Nobody really knows. You know, dreams are pretty amazing places, and it is possible to use them a bit, because I think that's what the mind is doing.
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
Throughout history, mankind has been fascinated by dreams and has strived to understand them and their role in our waking lives.
Dreams are considered important in virtually every culture in the world and throughout history. Some cultures would say this is the way that God speaks to us. Other people would say that there are other friendly spirits who are helping us with those dreams.
There is a universal awe of dreaming and a universal fear of dreaming. There's not a civilization in the world that hasn't developed a folklore deriving from dreams.
This is new.
These are ancient dream demons. Supposedly, they roam the dreams of the living, and they give them the power to cross the line and turn our nightmares into reality.
We have actually records on clay tablets from the Assyrians in Mesopotamia. So our interest in dreams go back to what was the dawn of humankind.
Many ancient civilizations believed that dreams held special powers and organized their societies around them.
The Egyptians looked at dreams as prophetic. There were special dream interpreters, and they had prominence, especially if a king, a pharaoh, or someone of royalty would dream a dream. It was very, very important. The Greeks had an incredible dreaming culture for over 1,000 years. There were dream temples, about 400 of them. This was specifically for healing.
If you had a physical problem, disease, you would go to a temple where you would spend the night sleeping. And in this temple, there would be snakes all around you, crawling over you, until you had a dream, which gave you the information that you needed to have around the illness that you were dealing with.
The earlier cultures really looked at the different ways of approaching the dream itself.
Very often, people are looking for disclosure of the future. We find evidence of that in the Bible, Old Testament, dream of Joseph, dream of Jacob, Jacob's ladder. Also contact, let's say, with the divinities, with the gods and with the goddesses.
Native American cultures, dreams being very, very important. This is the Great Spirit. This is Wankantanka talking to you. And so you pay great attention to them.
The Chinese, for example, believe that the spirit actually leaves the body during dream time.
They feel that the dream is an entry point into deeper worlds. And that sort of approach is quite frequent in the East, in other religions.
That's pretty. What is that?
This is my Malaysian dream doll. It's supposed to bring good dreams.
The Balinese were the culture that I discovered that was most interesting, and because they have a system of kind of teaching their kids lucid dreaming, to be aware that they were dreaming while they were dreaming. It's a whole different way of looking at it. And basically it's saying this is part of my mind, can be used by me.
The important point here that every culture in the world pays attention to dreams and realizes that they have some importance.
People have always tried to make sense out of dreams, this behavior, and that I'm sure will continue, whether or not there's sense to be made of it, and I think that's the real issue.
What the hell are dreams anyway?
Mysteries.
The truth is, we still don't know what they are or where they come from.
Do dreams serve some essential purpose for the human mind? Or are they simply a byproduct of normal brain activity? Science has not yet provided an answer.
There are many theories about why we have to dream. and none is really conclusive.
It may be that what you see is what you get, that dreams are just something that sort of spins off brain processes that are going on that have no real significance, and they may not be much more than that. It's still quite unclear whether there are some vital physiological processes that go on in sleep that don't happen at other times.
I don't see why you couldn't just give me a pill to keep me from dreaming.
Everyone's got to dream, young lady. If you don't dream, you go.
In 1900, Freud wrote a very influential book called The Interpretation of Dreams, where Freud indicated that dreams are important in understanding a person's neuroses, psychoses, their mental state of health, and showed how to work with dreams.
That really re-established, you might say, the importance of the dream in many ways in the culture and established it within the psychological discipline. The researches of Carl Jung was the next significant milestone.
Jung's idea was that they were kind of ancient symbols and sort of thought structures, and that we were all connected in some ways to each other at the base level of thought and feeling and dreams.
All day long I've been hearing those fingernails.
Fingernails? That made me remember the dream I had last night.
What'd you dream?
I dreamed about a guy in a dirty red and green sweater. Scream.
Nancy, you dreamed about the same creep I did.
Jung said, oh, dreams are telling us much more about what's going on. It's just not about us. It's about many things. And it's just not tapping into our lives now on an ego level. It's tapping into a much larger place, the place where Freddy Krueger lives.
Nightmares are the darker mysteries of the dream world. Do they come from a different place? Do they carry a more sinister message?
Out of all the chaos and the input that we deal with on a daily basis and we take in, our dreams need to process it and put it into a kind of a shape. Some of those shapes are nightmares.
Guys can have nightmares too, you know. You can get a corner on the market or something.
Many times people make distinctions between dreams and nightmares, and all a nightmare is a dream which brings really important information for us to understand, but the ego gets frightened by it.
It's dealing with things that are very, very unprocessed, or perhaps not reconciled or resolved in the mind yet. They are about blood, and they are about aggression, and they are about violence, and everything that we're taught not to be when we're kids, but is still lurking around there in very powerful ways in our subconscious all the time.
I know now that I brought him into my world. We all did. Gave him all the energy he needed. Our screams were all he needed.
And certainly in Nightmare on Elm Street, I felt like Freddy, beyond a character that somebody thought up, stood for tendencies of human beings, especially males, to be destructive and to want to slash and burn as opposed to nurture and protect.
The shadow part of ourselves, our psychological shadow, those parts of ourselves that we don't want to deal with, mommy and daddy told us not to deal with, or our society tells us not to deal with. We push it in the background, in the closet. It gets angry in that closet. It gets angry being pent up like that. And so when we let it out, when he comes out, he's angry as hell.
And so it will come and menace the individual in the dreams, and that's a good attention getter. When you scare somebody, that you sure get their attention.
I would say if we paid more attention to Freddy, dialogue with Freddy, get Freddy to cut his nails a little bit, love Freddy a little bit, he would transform into something else.
What other secrets does the sleeping mind hold? Are dreams powerful enough to affect our waking life?
We live in an age of sleep dysfunction. I mean, all you have to do is watch TV every night and see all the advertisements for sleep aids. There have been all kinds of reports recently of people taking, sleeping medications who wake up in the middle of a traffic accident and the last thing they remember was getting into bed.
The classic example I read in the New York Times about a year ago was a woman who got up, walked out on the street, went to a construction site, and woke up on something like the 4th story in one of those beams lying there. And they had to, rescue to get her down.
These people sometimes will even tie themselves to the bed after a while because it becomes so predictable. They can injure themselves, they can punch the wall or anyone with them. Obviously, after a little while, people learn not to sleep with them, but it really is acting out a dream.
While many instances of such activity have been recorded, no one really knows what humans are capable of. Can a person commit murder under the influence of a dream?
He took this knife and stabbed her over, over, over again.
In the middle of the night, Scott Falater stabbed his wife 44 times and dragged her body to the family swimming pool. He later claimed he had no knowledge of the crime and had been sleepwalking.
A murder being committed in a sleepwalking state is plausible. While he was sleepwalking, a dream could have been happening, and he could have been acting it out in some way.
I assume that I must have gone crazy, or that something in my head had broken.
We know that people can be aroused and their behavior changes rather dramatically, and typically they don't engage in really complicated behaviors. If you recorded his brainwave activity, you might find something unusual during this period, or you might find perfectly normal calculating behavior.
It's open to possibility. It doesn't mean that somebody's doing it in this case, that defense was correct. If you're accused of a murder, most people would do anything to avoid the consequences of that.
The simple explanation is that he woke up and he did it, and he went back to sleep, not that he was asleep.
In this case, the jury agreed, and Scott Falater was convicted of murder. Perhaps even more frightening is the idea central to the Nightmare on Elm Street films, that dreams can be deadly to the dreamers themselves.
There is a kind of a superstition that if you die in a dream, you really die. But I think there's a bit of the urban legend going on there.
A lot of people die in their sleep. After all, it happens all the time. The question is whether someone can be killed by a nightmare.
Sudden, unexpected nocturnal death syndrome is something that's been widely reported, in which people die, apparently in the midst of nightmares.
All reports were the same. A person in apparently good health went to sleep and died. Often the victim displayed labored breathing, screams, and frantic movements just before death. The Centers for Disease Control investigated these mysterious deaths, but no medical cause has yet been found.
Wes Craven read some newspaper articles about this syndrome, and that was his immediate inspiration for the Nightmare series.
I just kind of noted it as something that was strange and weird, and doctors had not known what had caused it, but it had elements of the story that were really, almost you could lift them out of the newspaper story and put them into a movie.
Why do you want to stay awake?
Because if I fall asleep, I'm not waking up.
We don't know if anybody can be killed by a nightmare because they can't tell us.
Very few people whom you find dead in the morning are able to tell you what they dreamt before they died.
Are dreams a doorway to another world? Is there something sinister lurking in our nightmares waiting for us? The answer, much like dreams themselves, remains a mystery.
Dreams have always been with us. It's something we return to again and again, just as we return to it every night.
And now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. And if I die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take.